Hello lovely listeners, I'm Sarah Cudmore, creator of the homeschool app Collage from Homegrown Learning, and today I'm joined by Matthew, who has been homeschooled, and he has just published his very first book, which I'm very excited about for him, called Never Again, A Battle Against Time. And so we're kind of recording this podcast really just to help other homeschooling parents and children, just to sort of help guide them and help them sort of know that actually there is lots of possibilities for their children. And, you know, in those moments of doubt that we all have sometimes, that actually our children are going to do really well and thrive in the things that they're really passionate about. And every homeschooling journey is totally personal. You know, we can't compare ourselves to each other because it's all about the child. And so I'm hoping that this podcast tonight will just reassure some of those people and make the hairs go up on the arms, like I did when I saw the post that Matthew's mum Liz put up on Facebook about his book. So I'm really grateful that Liz posted that. Thank you. So yes, you can probably see we've got Liz as well, Matthew's mum, who is hopefully going to chip in and tell us, you know, some things about Matthew's homeschooling journey and kind of how it was for her and how she managed to make things happen for him. So I'm really grateful, both of you, for your time today.
Thank you.
So let's just maybe start with a little bit about your background and the homeschooling. Matthew, were you homeschooled from the start? Did you ever go to school?
From the start, I was like always homeschooled up until A levels. Yeah.
And was that unusual in like your sort of family and friendship circles, or was there? I don't know whereabouts in the country you are and whether you want to share that, because like I'm rural and in Cornwall, and the homeschooling has grown over the years, so there's more of us, but there's not that many of us. Was it kind of normal or for you guys?
No, like everyone in the family who ever even tried would stop after a few years, while we were carried on obviously for all these years. So it was very different.
And what was the kind of the reasoning behind wanting to homeschool for you?
I think for myself and my husband, you know, I think we have our children for such a short period of time. You know, 16 years kind of like fly by, don't they?
Yeah.
And you know, we wanted them to go at their own pace, to grow at their own pace without the constraints of all the stuff that comes later with life, you know, whether it be school or, you know, whatever. Just a little bit of, you know, time to follow what they wanted to do. And actually, yeah, it wasn't when we first started with Matthew, there was nothing online, hardly anything online, hardly anybody did it. There was no sort of links online at all. It was very much of a, you know, are we doing the right thing in terms of, you know, following work-wise, you know, are we doing too much? Are we doing too little? I mean, now there's so much online.
Yeah, it's almost, I don't know if it's a good thing really, because I think actually, although it's like reassuring because a lot of people are homeschooling now, I guess when you started, it's more about your gut feeling and just sort of checking in with Matthew and knowing and seeing and using all your senses to kind of work out what's really working for him. Whereas I think now there's so much, and everyone's talking about unschooling, and everyone's talking about, and everyone's sort of, that you kind of, I don't know, I don't know whether it's a bit more confusing now, really.
Probably swings and roundabouts, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it probably could be confusing because there is too much, and then when we were doing it, it was confusing because there wasn't enough. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
And so Matthew, you're 19 now, I think, aren't you? And so what were like your earliest memories of like homeschooling? What was your days like?
I remember early on, because I would wake up later than if I was going to school. And I remember early on, I was struggling still with motivation. And my parents said, oh, we'll allow you to have half an hour before we do work to do what you want, to like do whatever it is. And waking up early and doing the work that I didn't like, doing what I wanted before doing the work, because I still have the work to look forward to.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to my son. Message for all parents there. And so what were the methods, or what did homeschooling look like for you guys? Did you take a bit of a formal approach, or was there a sort of mismatch of things that you used?
Yeah, it was like, so we wouldn't have set times for different things, but we'd make sure to get things done within the day, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, so were you like following a little bit of a structure with like English and maths, and then was it a bit more flexible with other subjects, or was it more about like real life learning, doing things within the day that were like part of like household?
I'd say it's more of a set structure, but it's still very flexible in that if, say, we wanted to like go out and do something, like go travel somewhere, we'd be able to do that because obviously we could plan and schedule to do the work another day.
And were you involved in like the planning and the structuring of like your learning, or was it sort of more something directed through your parents and stuff?
Yeah, they would ask me on my opinion on what I wanted to do, what day, and stuff like that. And I, of course, wasn't very with the information.
Okay, you can be honest. I think we can all relate to that with our children, and I think
bribery, though it shouldn't, kind of. Well, it is. I mean, people go to work, and the incentive is you get paid. And I think sometimes, a lot of the time, children need an incentive. Especially when they're doing something. It feels like you're going uphill all the time, learning things new. It's challenging. I think with Matthew especially, the girl, I've got 4 kids, and the girls were quite easy to sort of sit down and sort of go through their times table. But I don't know if you remember, Matthew, but he would go on the trampoline, bounce around while I'd ask him questions.
Brilliant.
And that he actually found thrived on that rather than just sitting down and doing something.
Yeah.
So it was that freedom to be able to switch it up and change it and find what worked.
Yeah,
which is nice.
I can relate to that as well, as being a head teacher and seeing in school just the increased amount of time that children are sat at desks, and it just doesn't work for all children, does it? So that's really beautiful that you recognise that with Matthew, and you're sort of allowing him to be physical and move around and things. And actually there's loads of research about how children retain information and what they're doing, so yeah, flexible. And so you said you've got 4 girls as well, and
3 girls and
3
Matthew.
girls. Okay, and were they homeschooled too, or?
Yes, we've home educated them. I've still got 1 at home. The other 2 have gone in. One before Matthew, he's 16. She's in 6th form now.
Yeah.
And then the younger one started in year 9, and she was 13. Yeah.
And would you say your homeschooling experience, like of delivering that for the children, was that different for all of them, or were you?
I think it is very different for all of them. Being able to cater for their needs. You learn what wants to sit down, or who can sit down for longer periods of time, or who needs longer breaks, or some like to get it over and done with, and then they've got the rest of the day to themselves, or and also to make my life and my husband's life easier, incorporating fun and trying to turn things into a game.
Yeah.
And where they don't even realize that they're learning to add or take away stuff, and yeah. We did a game where we stuck numbers on the floor, answers to times tables, and we'd shout out the answer. The 4 of them would try and jump to the answer, and they used to ask to play that game so much.
Oh, I love that. A little bit of sibling competition there.
Yeah.
And so your methods were like your focus was sort of formally you wanted them to grasp a certain level of literacy and numeracy, and was the rest of the stuff that you did sort of child-led, or were you following like the national curriculum with like the non-core subjects? Or
No, I mean, we didn't follow the national curriculum really, and we had books that generally followed it in terms of the core subjects.
yeah.
We only, once they got to sort of 13 was when we looked at what exam board that they were going to do.
Yeah.
And then you follow that curriculum, as it were.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so apart from the core ones, then they pretty much decided what they wanted to focus on after that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Matthew, like, I mean, it sounds like your homeschooling was pretty cool, and your mum and dad were pretty flexible with their approach to it. But were there any challenges within homeschooling that you had?
I think the flexibility was also a problem, because it was hard to be motivated when you knew, oh, I can just move it to the next day to do it in the moment. It was hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some children are very self-motivated, aren't they? And can, you know, so get up and they want to make themselves a little timetable and get on with it. And then other children, my son's exactly the same. Well, actually, if I gave him the choice, he'd rather just carry on with his Lego all day or his whatever. Yeah. And so that was the same for you. Yeah. Okay. And Liz, like for you, were there any challenges with homeschooling Matthew when you could see that was kind of difficult for him?
Generally, Matthew is the type of person that if you reason with him, you know, and say, well, you know, if you get it done now, you know, you play a game after.
Yeah.
It's about, you know, following the slimy green frog, as it were. Do it now, then you don't have to think about it later. He was very much, you know, and then you'd say, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Challenges are probably more in terms of resources.
Yeah.
And again, as parents, maybe not necessarily that Matthew would notice so much is, you know, are we going in the right direction to get him ready for, you know, GCSEs or IGCSEs, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was.
And what would you tell yourself now if you know, preparing your next child and having had 3 go through it or whatever, what would you tell yourself now? Would you be more relaxed about it, or is it still, did you find it quite stressful?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think I probably would still tell myself to be more relaxed. I think, you know, I did find it, you know, I had the children we wanted to spend the time with them. Like I said, we don't have them for very long.
No.
Yeah, and it was, like I said, more in terms of finding resources, and yeah, with my fault, they like being at home.
Yeah.
So I'd probably struggled a bit getting them out.
Yeah.
But again, it was still okay. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, you know, talking to myself with hindsight, it probably would be, yeah, just to probably just chill and enjoy it a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And would you say, Matthew, like going through the journey, was socializing difficult for you? I mean, you've talked a little bit about how you kind of enjoyed being at home. Were you able to get out and sort of meet other people, or how did that work for you?
When I went out and like met people at like all these home education groups, it was like easy to make friends there, but taking anything away from that was a lot harder, like keeping in touch with them and stuff like that. And even when I went off to school and went into A-level, at first it was like hard to speak up and make friends and stuff. But after the first year, and I'd got used to interacting with all these different people all the time, I got a lot better at just talking, speaking my mind, and made a lot of friends by the end of it.
Yeah. So, and you know, we're all different, aren't we? We've all got different personalities, and we all, you know, some of us relish that moment of being able to sort of speak up in groups, and some homeschooling children, you know, don't and are quite shy, and that's probably quite typical of the average child, whether they're in school or not. So I think the socialization is always something that other homeschooling parents worry about. It was the one thing that I was worried about going into homeschooling, was like, will my children be able to, you know, be social, get out into the world and do all of that kind of thing. And like you say, there's lots of groups and things like that we've had.
I think it does depend on the child. And you know, you've got to take it on a child by child basis, as it were. I mean, I think, I know we could have gone out every day of the week, you know, to a group. I think you do as much or as little as you want, you know. When you're an adult and you're in work, you know, you're not confined to your peers or, you know, your own age group. You know, you meet all sorts of people, and I think that's one of the things when you go out to, you know, a home education, you know, you get to meet the parents, the younger siblings, you know, that sort of thing that is more in line with adult life, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's beautiful watching some of the sort of younger children having those conversations with the adults, and then some of the older children working, you know, helping some of the little children. Yeah, I agree with you. I was really bowled over with actually how much socialization they get, and actually how experienced they are when they get to the sort of point where they need to be, how they're able to adapt to situations really quite well. So you did take GCSEs. When did you start sort of prepping, and what subjects, and how did you choose them?
You were 13 when you started.
Yeah, 13 when we started. And at first we were, how many were we doing? Mostly, 5. And I think, did we add one afterwards? I think we wanted to do 5, but to get where I wanted, I needed to do one more. So we decided to do an extra one on top, which we added in later. Yeah.
How did you feel at 13? How did you feel about doing GCSEs? Did you recognize that was something you needed to do for the next stage, and were you up for it, or were you a bit defiant and a bit like, I don't want to do this, this is hard work? Or
probably a bit of both, yeah, because I knew that I had to do it, but I didn't want to do it, so I would try and get out of doing it. But at the end of the day, I ended up doing it, and of course I got the grades that I needed to get where I wanted to go.
That's awesome. And did you did you want to do GCSEs? Could you see at 13 that you know that was the stage that you were going to go through to get to where you wanted to get? Or was it a bit more of mum and dad saying, come on, we need you to get your GCSEs? And
yeah, I mean, I saw the importance that it could have, not only on like life and the qualifications, but also because it would, like, I'll be able to teach myself like discipline and stuff like that, because I was holding myself to a certain standard and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Matthew did really well. I mean, when we were doing the exams, we couldn't do GCSE. We had to do international GCSE at the time. And I mean,
I remember going into the English exam, because the only one that was available for us was the Cambridge exam for English.
Right.
And I went into that and I wasn't confident at all. I thought, oh, I'm going to fail. And then when I came out, I got my results and I got a 98%. So I was really surprised.
Wow. Yeah. Hence, you're a writer.
Yeah. But honestly, you know, 3 years before that was the whole opposite. You know, it wasn't it? I mean, it was his worst subject. Absolutely hated it, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess it's because there's so much, like with, say, maths, there's a definitive answer for what you're looking at. with English, there's so much variety, what you can say, what you can do, that it becomes hard to pick. And sometimes you don't want to use that much mental capacity. Sometimes you just want to relax.
Oh gosh, you just sound like my son's like a mini you. I'm just like taking me back to all my little stuff with him. And so I've got a short description of your book for our listeners. So it goes like this. Katie Bloom has a great life, amazing, caring friends, a warm, loving family, and she is just starting to realise her interest in one of the boys in her class. She's thinking about her future and what she wants later in her life freely, with no concerns whatsoever. Everything is going great in her life, but as the saying goes, all good things have to come to an end at some time, right? And a few of your reviews, one said the storyline held them in suspense, and another one said you took them on a badass journey, thinking it was going to go one way with Katie, and then it went another. So, like, I'm intrigued by this. What led you to writing a story?
I had been considering it after I got my GCSE results. I was like, oh, maybe I'm a bit better than this than I thought. So I've been considering writing a book because I'd like been reading a lot of books. I've owned over like 140 books, and I've read all of them multiple times. I love reading. And one day we were in the middle of London driving around, and I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna write something right now. And I wrote out the start of this book. And I just was like, oh, that was quite fun. Let me continue doing this. And before I knew it, I had finished the whole book. And I didn't know anything about like the planning of book or anything like that. But then I looked online at the like supposed word count you're supposed to have for certain genres of books. And I had already met all of those. So I was like, oh, wow, maybe I could actually do this.
Wow. So you were like, you'd done your GCSEs and that was the first time you suddenly thought, well, I'm actually quite good at English. I love reading.
Yeah.
I can't find enough books that I really love. And so I'm going to write one.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were like, 10, 11, 12, 13, really fascinated and writing little books and making little books all the time.
No.
Oh, wow. I love that. I really do. Because I think and particularly boys often come to writing quite a lot later, and it's it's really lovely. And I think as parents, it can be a little bit worrying when they kind of, I don't know, I can only talk about my own son and the children that I had when I was in school, but I'm generalizing, but boys tended to be sort of wanting to write shorter, more factual stuff, just keep it short and sweet and let's get it done. So it's just so great to hear that, like, your motivation came much later. Your love of reading, was that something you always had, or when did you sort of develop that?
I think for one of my birthdays, my parents bought me this trilogy of books. And I had kept it to the side. I hadn't bothered. I was like, oh, I'll read it some other time. And then one night I was really bored. So I picked it up, and literally in the morning, I had read through the whole trilogy, stayed up all night. Oh. And I realized how much I actually loved reading. And I was hooked from there and bought all these books later on.
There's a lot to be said for boredom, isn't there?
Yeah.
How old were you? How old would you have been then?
Probably 12, something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, probably around 12 after. I mean, it was the journey literally from when we started. We had a chat with we've had of all our kids. So when you get to 13, and if you want to do GCSE, the hard work starts then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we can put all the information in front of you, but you have to do the hard work.
Yeah.
And Matthew didn't have an issue, as he said before, with maths and things that did have just a definitive answer, but English he did struggle with a lot. He didn't want to do it. I don't know if you remember the first story I asked you to write, a descriptive story about walking the shop up the road. Just a page, or even just a page or something. and you wrote like 1.5 lines, I put my shoes on, went to the shop, came back. and that was it.
that is my experience of like many boys. It's just like, it's like, and getting them to write too early, they just don't see the point in it. It's like,
I think I realized after a lot of, thrashing about in the metaphorical water, as it were, nearly drowning, that we needed to take the fear away.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a right or wrong answer. It was very much, well, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to say. What, where are the guidelines? Give me an example. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And I think when we were looking at past papers, and I would give Matthew the paper and I'd give him the mark scheme as well, and the examiner's response, I'd give him everything, and he'd say, I'm going to copy it. I said, that's fine. Copy it word for word. And I think taking the fear away made a difference to, okay. And eventually he started giving me back the mark scheme and the examiner's response and say, I'll look at it after when I'm finished, but yeah, it was a big transformation actually.
That's amazing. It really is. And once you'd written your book, how did you get it published? What was the little story behind that?
So obviously my mum writes some stuff as well, and she helped me with editing the book. So we went through the whole thing like 6-7 times to make sure we got everything that we could possibly find to correct all the grammar mistakes, spelling errors, make things to sound better and stuff like that. And after we'd done that, I had been doing some research on where I could possibly publish it. And all I was seeing was, I'll send it to these publishers and stuff. But I decided that I didn't want to do that. So instead of that, I found that Amazon offers this service, the Kindle Direct Publishing, where you can publish a book free of charge, and they only print to demand. So
brilliant.
and you get a percentage of those royalties and stuff like that.
That's really helpful, particularly like when you're first starting out. And what was it? Has it literally just been published, or was it published like last year?
No, it was it was the 1st of September or the 2nd of September that it got fully published, so just early this month.
Oh, I feel really proud of you.
Thank you.
Such a great achievement. And so currently, have you finished your A-levels, or you're in the middle of?
Yeah, I finished my A-levels.
You did, you have. And so what's next for you? Is it?
Already I've got into uni and I'm doing creative and professional writing. So
Wow. Oh, well done. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. And is that with a view of of wanting to carry on writing and publishing books, or is it just you're not sure where?
I want to. I've already written some other books that I need to polish up and stuff like that, but I want to get better at writing and be able to be what I would consider as my best self in terms of writing. And so
Wow. When you get going with a book, is it like no one speak to me, I'm you head down in it, or can you break from writing it? Did it take long to write?
This first book, it took over a year to do the writing, and then over a year to do the editing. So it took a long time. But so I wrote another book, and then I'm writing another book, and I've got those in a more structured manner, and I've increased the writing that I'll do. So one thing that I found was that if I set myself a goal for the week and just sit down and do it, then it's a lot better than if I just do it whenever I feel like it, because I might take a few weeks break. So now I sit down, do about 2,000 words, then I'll get up, and that's it for the week. And through that, I got to finish my second book in only 6 months, which is a massive improvement.
Yeah. And so in those skills that you're using to write the book, has that come from what you've learned through being homeschooled, your your self-direction for your writing?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, one of the big things, especially, is when you are home educated, is the onus is on, you learn very quickly that the onus is on you. You can say as much as you want, I'm not doing that, but where you can, as a parent, you can say to the child, well, okay, what, that's fair enough. I can't make you do it, but if you want this in life, you're going to have to get yourself there. We'll help you. And I think very early on, wasn't it? Apart from English for a while, I think Matthew was very good and learning very quickly that the onus was on him.
I was doing my chemistry exam and I got a 5 instead of a 6 that I needed to get into a school that I wanted to go to. And at that time, I realized, felt that I had let myself down. Instead of, I didn't feel like I should blame any of my parents or anything, because they had given me everything I needed to pass and I hadn't tried hard enough. So next time I took the exam a month later, I studied as hard as I could and I ended up getting the grade I needed to get in.
Yeah. Wow. I love that, because that is, as parents, we desperately want things to work out for our kids, and sometimes we can scaffold them too much, whereas at some point they've got to learn actually, the hard way. But like mentally, do you feel because obviously that's quite disappointing and you can be quite hard on yourself. How were you mentally okay about that? Were you like, I haven't worked hard enough, it is my fault, I'm going to pull myself together and get on with it? Or do you really beat yourself up about it? Or
Did at the time, because I'd done a lot of exams in the past. Like, I'd taken a lot of different courses, I'd done dancing and stuff, I'd taken loads of exams and I'd never failed one before. So this was the first sort of setback I'd had in terms of academic achievement in my life. So it was quite hard to get past the first.
Yeah.
I'm happy that, it's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah.
I don't think that qualifications are the be all and end all of everything. They don't define a person in terms of what, how they are. But the fact is, to be able to say in everything that any of our children do, is that if you've tried your hardest and it doesn't work out, there's not an issue.
Yeah.
You tried your hardest and, you move on, you learn something from it, you go to the next thing. So obviously, if you know you haven't, but still, not to beat yourself up, but what can I do next time so that this doesn't happen?
Yeah. And I think that's lovely that that happened quite late, in a sense. I think children in schools are having, there's a lot of mental health issues around youngsters these days, and I think the pressure is on them too early, to be able to deal with failure or recognize what's gone wrong and how they can do better for themselves. Certainly, I saw that in school, in primary schools, children sort of crying because their pre-SATs papers came back and it wasn't good enough, and it wasn't. But actually, so it's interesting to hear that happened much later for you. But although you were disappointed and it was, you were angry with yourself, but you were able to pick yourself up and move yourself on. Because you'd had enough time to develop and experience and recognize how to do that.
And like I said, I think it was a good thing, especially knowing that Matthew was older, and we had said, your exam's coming up, you need to study for it. And I think other exams you only didn't need to spend a lot of time studying them for him to retain the information.
Yeah.
And I think probably you might have got a bit of but it's a good lesson to learn, and he then went back and achieved what he needed to achieve. So
because I remember leading up to that exam, when I failed it, I remember I was looking at the past papers and then I would look at the answers and they'd be like, oh yeah, I can answer that. And then when I go into the exam, I see the same question, I'm like, I can't answer that.
And Liz, I guess, like, having your 4 children going through homeschooling, would you say like there is, does it feel like 12, 13 is the right age to sort of like knuckle down and be like, okay, let's start? Was it the same for all of your children? Or, I mean, I know you've got to at that age if you're going to do GCSEs in line with when, sort of 15, 16.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think doing by, 10, 13, as some do in school, from between sort of 13 and 15, 16, personally, my view is it's too much. We did split them up. So we did some when Matthew was 15 and some when he was 16.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, well, for our children, for Matthew, worked a lot better than trying to cram everything in 1 year.
Yeah.
I do think if at all possible, they shouldn't be all done in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's useful information. And what difference, Matthew, do you think being homeschooled has made for you?
I think it helped me a lot with managing myself and my own things. So when I got into A-level, I was doing digital media and psychology. And of course, my parents don't know anything about that. So they couldn't help me. And I had to do all of it myself. And I think that obviously I passed like pretty easily. I got like a B and a distinction merit. So I was able to pass like just relying on myself without much stress while all the people around me were struggling. And it felt like good to know that I have gained like some skills that people in school may not have developed at the same age as me.
And why do you think they were struggling?
It's probably because a lot more of the onus was on them to do the work and study outside of school, while I had already, obviously, I study only outside of school.
Yeah.
I was like more ready to do that kind of thing compared to them.
Yeah, that's really
got somebody saying, do this now, this is next, that's next. Although, it can be helpful at times, of course. I think at other times, especially when you get to A-level, and then, if you're going to uni or college or whatever, they kind of just say, this is what you need to do, and then leave you to it, which is very different, I think, to secondary, where they tell you, stage by stage what you need to do. And all of a sudden you're just left on your own. You're like, oh, man, you're going to help me.
Yeah.
Matthew had that skill already.
Yeah. And in school, they're very much geared to driving you through the exams or the tests or the SATs or whatever. So any advice, Matthew, that you would give homeschooling kids or parents? What would be like your key bits of advice?
Probably like to the parents, I'd say to not give up just because your kid is like struggling or doesn't want to do it, because it will be hard at times. You will struggle, they will struggle as well. But at the end of the day, they're going to get experiences that other kids may not have the opportunity to do. You're going to have a lot more freedom to do things in life. Like I remember we were able to go on holiday at a cheaper time because schools were on, but we were able to do that because we were homeschooled. Yeah. So it gave us like a greater opportunity to do certain things that other people may not have. And then with like the kids, it's hard because they have to experience these things on their own, because you can't just tell them, oh, well, you should do this, it's the best thing, because no one wants to listen to that. They have to hear or learn themselves by doing the work, listening to what their parents say, which is something that they will learn. It's just about when and how it comes along.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. And Liz, what about you? Have you got any top tips for other parents or that you would like to share?
I mean, I think enjoy it more, and I think trust your instincts. If you've actually made the decision to home educate, go with that. Believe in yourself. I think that there's we're not people out there who are doing their own thing. We can go out there as home educators with our children and do what we want to do. We love our children. We at the time when they're with us, know what's best for them with their input, and to enjoy it. I think that's one of the biggest things I'd say, is to just relax and enjoy it. And what works for one child is not necessarily going to work for the others. I think it's key to listen out, look for signs, and talk and communication with the child to find out what they like, dislike, and talk more, talk as much as you can, and make it fun.
I think I totally agree with you, because I think life, particularly now at the moment in the current sort of world situations, is so serious, isn't it? There's so, I'm not belittling the things that are going on, but actually for the young people growing up, it's a very serious world. And it is really, children naturally are fun loving and inquisitive, and it is really important to embrace all of that. And like you were saying, Matthew, it's great to be able to follow their interests. If they're interested in, I don't know, World War II, and being able to get to a World War II museum, you don't have to wait to a certain year group where you're going to study World War II or whatever, and just to really make the most of every opportunity just to go with your child's passions, and I think that helps children to feel sort of respected and that their parents are really interested in them, doesn't it? And there's nothing nicer than going out for a day anyway, is there? In fact, actually, the children, when I was at school, I used to do like a year 6 review of like their primary school, and I used to ask them, what was the best thing about primary school, and it would always be either camps that we'd gone on or school trips. It's never about sitting in the classroom. So get out there and just like embrace it.
Absolutely. And kids learn more, don't they? When they're having fun, they don't even realize they're learning, but they are learning and they're soaking it all up.
And I think that's another thing, actually. In school, they spend all their time writing down what they've learned to prove they've learned it. But actually, homeschoolers, we don't write everything down. We might write some things down, but we don't write everything down. We're about experiencing it and trusting that our children have experienced it without having to spend all that time writing it down, and hence they can learn and absorb a lot more. A lot less time wasted.
Not having to, I think one of the things is not having to we have to jump through hoops, and it's going to happen in life, isn't it? When you get to college, uni, work till you're 70, whatever, and not having to jump through hoops early, I think, is a good thing to find out more about yourself, find out your likes, sometimes more importantly your dislikes, and to find your voice, to feel listened, to feel heard, to be appreciated. And to hopefully, when you get to kind of Matthew's age, you understand yourself so much, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, whether you prefer to work and be at home because you love home and that kind of life, or whether you actually, you want to work Monday to Friday, or actually you prefer to like chunk your work and do 6 months where you write a book and then take 2 months off. I think there's bigger opportunities, and hopefully, Matthew, you will find your passions, and you'll get into sort of careers that you really love because you know yourself and you know how you work so well. Whereas I do think other children will perceive work as being a sort of more of a 9 to 5. And that actually worries me, that schools, the sort of emphasis on homework and things, actually the message that it gives children is you've been at school from 9 till 3:30 and you've done work, and now you go home and do more work. And actually, as a work-life balance, that's a really bad message to be giving young people about, it's no wonder that people are so stressed out, aren't they? And they're going home, they're still focusing on work and not their love of life and stuff. So I think we've kind of covered everything. It's been so fascinating hearing your journey. For me, I think just hearing that you kind of, you weren't some incredible
reader from 7 and writing like at an early age and creating all these stories is you know, it's really appealing, because just from my own experience, you know, my own son really doesn't enjoy writing at the moment, and we're just going with it being fun and all of that. But you know, to think that actually that doesn't mean that at some stage he or other children are not going to love writing so much that they choose a career in it. So I'm really grateful for you for sharing that story with us. And I wish you every luck with your book. I'm going to put on the show notes, put a link. It's on Amazon. And so I'll put a direct link to that. So anybody listening to this that fancies supporting you, or even getting your book for friends or family, will hopefully do that. And I really hope it's been helpful for the listeners, really, because you know, the more stories that are out there about the successes. I don't even like saying success, because success isn't defined by the fact that you've published a book, but just, it's more the sort of success of the homeschooling, that you've got and done something you're really passionate about. So thank you once again. And to anyone out there, if you've got a different story that you'd like to share, please send me a message via the website collageapp.co.uk, and let me know if there's anything else you would like covered. And so until next time, keep calm, grab yourself a copy of his book and enjoy. Thank you.